This is Hunt Nebraska, the official podcast for insight into Nebraska's hunting and shooting sports community. Be sure to give us a follow on Facebook, our space for sharing stories, information, tips, and techniques. Now, Hunt Nebraska.
Welcome into the Hunt Nebraska cabin. We are in the month of June, which means the turkey season has come to a close. So you'll be probably seeing some posts and recaps a little bit, because I know Hershy and myself are out there finishing the challenge. But even though it's sad to have the season go away, we can start planning towards next fall. And to do that, we have brought in a special guest to talk a little bit about the big game draw season or draw application period and some changes for the big game season. But before we get into talking all about it, we need to go around, introduce ourselves, and let the public know who we are, who we work for. So I'm Kyle Gaston with the Hunter Ed Coordinator with Nebraska Game and Parks. To my left, I have, as always,
I'm Hershy, also Game and Parks. And I think you got it right. We'll talk about it here in a little bit. I do think the draw period is kind of a season also, because you can be successful in getting that tag, and you can be, all right, I got a preference point. In some cases, that's what you're after. In other cases, it's kind of that consolation prize as well.
And then we have, like I said, we brought in a special guest, and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yep, I'm Luke Meduna. I'm the big game program manager with the Nebraska Game Parks here in Lincoln.
Yeah, and so obviously bringing you in knows we get to talk all about the big game season and out now, where you can find it out. I believe they've all been mailed out here at this point. The big game guides have been busy being printed and mailed out all across the states. The digital version is available online. So you can go on there and check out what all has been updated, because there's, on the beginning of every guide every year, we put in what's new to let all the hunters know what's going on that year. And that, for the big game guide, I think it's a little bit filled up on that first page there this year. So thought we want to just touch base on some of these changes going on, why they're happening, and then also to remind you, maybe some permit quota changes and a little bit of maybe any changes into any application periods or anything like that. Just make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
So we'll just jump right into it, unless there's anything you think needs to be talked about first, Luke.
No, I think the going to season choice for their unit buck tags, which we're calling them unit buck tags now because those are what were the November firearm permits. It's been kind of a long request, probably going on 10 or 15 years, kind of ever since we did a lot of the, our antlerless permits have always been season choice format. We've created a lot of other permits that are also season choice, youth and landowner, and had moved our statewide buck. That whitetail statewide buck has been season choice for a long time, and so a lot of our hunters had requested that. The MDCA permits were season choice. It was just kind of a natural progression to move our November firearm permits, those unit permits that allow the harvest of a buck, move those over to a season choice format. Just to match everything else.
Does that kind of help too in the management strategy of things?
A little bit. It makes it a little easier for our hunters. We've got a lot of hunters that like to hunt multiple seasons, and so it just helps balance that.
And you found out, Luke, that even though they might hunt multiple seasons, they're probably sticking to one unit primarily.
Yeah. Most of our hunters in the state, when I've surveyed them, it's about 85% of our resident hunters only hunt one unit. And so there's, less than, or basically 15% that hunt two or more. And so they still have that opportunity at this point to, if they want to get two different, unit tags or get a statewide permit, they can still, fit all that. But that's part of it. It keeps some of that pressure a little more localized and not as much reliance on statewide permits. But yeah, it's a natural progression. It's been something, our hunters have been asking for it for 10 plus years. A lot of our staff have kind of been asking about it, and we finally, it coincides with a permit fee increase with permit prices going up this year. So it's been something we've been talking about for a while now.
And then hunter selection, I think, helps a little bit there too. If don't feel so much pressure in those 9 days. You have to get a deer, or else this tag disappears. Now you have I saw the muzzleloader season, or hey, I do have some time. I can go out archery hunting earlier on and still maybe be a little more selective if they choose to be.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too with our the other permits that are season choice. We don't see a big increase in success. You know, it's not like those MDCA permits didn't have a higher success rate because they were open longer. You know, in some ways, you know, yeah, you get more opportunity to get out there and hunt. That can lead to more success, but also you don't have that pressure of, oh man, this tag is done in 27 minutes. I better shoot that buck, you know, there and the end of the November firearm season. There's going to be some people that, hey, I'll just hold off, and then end up not feeling it. So it kind of balances out.
Yep.
That's always interesting. We should have a chat on that. I think you could do a whole podcast on just that, how you figure out how many tags to kind of issue in an area, realizing, well, here's our success rate, and everyone buys them with that dream of, I'm gonna fill it, or there are a few people like, I'm not gonna fill it unless the right deer walks out in front of me at the right time. But I'd say for most folks, it's kind of like I've got the idea, the goal to fill it, but at the same token, you don't just say, okay, we can only harvest 100 deer in this small area. We're only going to issue 100 tags. No, there's some science that goes into, all right, here's the success rate. We know that X% are going to be, and that's a little bit of science, or a lot of science. I'm guessing a little art, though, too.
It's more art than science.
We won't get into that here today, folks, because that one's always kind of an interesting side of things.
Yeah. Yep. We're looking at those success rates year to year and just different metrics within the harvest stuff that give us cues on whether or not we need to be increasing or decreasing and all that.
Because the other side of that, Kyle, would be, you know, on the rest of some of our Game and Parks family on the fishing side, when it comes to just the sale of fishing permits, they can look at the weather from year to year, and by a certain point, they know whether it's going to be up or down. Yeah. Because it's kind of more of a, hey, I don't have to apply. And if I'm going to go camping, and the lake's nearby, I'm going to grab my fishing permit. But if it's raining that weekend, nope, I'm probably not doing it. But be interesting to see how some of the success, how much it varies from year to year. And if weather or some other things kind of play into it. I got to assume some extremes do when it comes to deer.
Yeah, for sure. There's always years when, you know, whether it's a really bad winter or, you know, November firearm was, you know, 8 degrees and a foot of snow, and it's like, we're not going to make major adjustments. You know, then we kind of look at some of the other metrics and, you know, but.
Or you have, you know, a 500-year flood that goes through a big part of the state, or
Oh, like I said, that's a whole nother show, though, folks. We got to jump into this. I got to assume, though, and you're a numbers guy, Luke. You like numbers.
I do.
What's your favorite?
I don't know that I can't pick one.
You can't pick one.
Can't pick one.
They're all my favorite.
They're all my favorite. Have you ever watched to see once the big game guide goes online, how many people view it right away?
No, because I don't have access to that, because if I did, I'd probably watch.
You'd probably watch it.
I'd watch those Google metrics. And
hey, guess what, sweetie? We had another 100 views. I can see, because I got to assume people are just waiting for that and looking at it. And probably, and for some, we don't even have to put a press release out that it's available. They're already like, oh yeah, here we go, 2026, what I've been waiting for.
Yep.
So,
moving down through the next item. So now we got the unit buck, season choice format we hit on. Looks like some boundary changes have happened there for the river antlerless season there. So I think those, just pay attention to theirs on the guide on page.
River antlerless is completely reformatted. It's instead of one unit that's statewide, it's actually 4 separate units. That's been getting cut down these last few years to the point where we just realize we need more local control to try to manage that antlerless harvest. And we're no longer managing from a spot of abundance for our whitetails. We've got localized places of abundance, and we want to keep that pressure. We want to limit the amount of pressure where it is. So it also is going to force people they can't just go by, hey, I want my river antlerless. You have to pick which one. So then you got to look at those boundaries. With the way it's been cut down these last few years, there's been a few people that have bought a permit and continued to hunt in areas that are no longer in river antlerless.
Oh, no.
So it'll force people to look at those boundaries closer this year too. So.
And it definitely has changed, folks. If you haven't looked at that and are a annual user of that or a consistent user, take a peek at it. The map is definitely helpful.
Yep, it's way
You're
different.
You're going to see some differences.
Yep.
And that season mainly came about due to kind of some depredation issues or some issues with
helping deal with depredation
farmers
on private land along those river corridors, because that's where 95% of our depredation complaints occur, is in those corridors. And so that's what that permit has been used for, historically and currently. There's still areas where we've got, differing levels of abundance of whitetails. You know, it's not what it was, 8 years ago, but there's still areas with, where we need to, offer that permit where it's useful. And one of the things too, you'll notice when you look at it, we actually added some areas to the river antlerless. The Blue River's got added to that, the Big Blue, and then an additional stretch of the Little Blue.
Yeah,
So,
I remember you mentioned that area is a little bit up on population from your initial trends.
southeast part of Nebraska is kind of getting to that tipping point where it's like we need to start leaning on the deer a little harder.
And talking about quotas, so yeah, you mentioned the southeast is kind of going up a little bit, but for majority of the state seem to kind of be going, reducing a little bit of permits. Is that about right?
Yeah, in general, yeah, for the most part, there's only a couple permits that still have bonus tags on, removing bonus tags. A lot of those quotas are continuing to come down. Not a huge change in our quotas, overall, but just some slight quota adjustments on the deer side.
And so, best thing is just make sure you're looking at that guide. I know we have that whole 12 through 17 is the pages. We're mainly talking about deer here right now, but there's also, I believe, some stuff for antelope and. Yep.
Antelope quotas probably were impacted the biggest. It finally to the point where we're like, okay, we can. We need to reduce those even more than we have the last few years.
I got to assume drought is kind of playing into this a little bit.
Yep.
And what comes along with drought. I can only imagine your job might be a little easier. Might not be as much fun, Luke, is if the deer were spread out evenly, density-wise across all landscapes here in Nebraska and all that. But that's probably why you got into this. It wasn't for fame or fortune, though the fame comes with it. You're waiting on the fortune. It's just like you said, there's little hot pockets here and there of, oh my goodness, what's going on there that isn't happening over there, because I think all three of us can look at spots and just like, there's a bunch of deer. This spring turkey season saw a lot of does and fawns running around in some spots. I hadn't seen them in a while, and then there's other spots that you're still kind of scratching your head and just like, I'm still not seeing sign.
Yep, it's definitely it's highly variable across the landscape at this point.
That's got to make it kind of tough on a statewide program manager, just like, well, because you're hearing both sides, right?
Yep.
I'm not seeing any deer. We need to do something. I'm seeing too many deer.
Yeah.
We got to do something.
Yeah, and sometimes they're only a few miles apart.
Isn't that something else?
I talked to one landowner yesterday. He goes, I don't know what's happened, but he's like, I got one place that's got twice as many deer as what we had 5 years ago, and another place 3 miles away that has half as many deer as we had 5 years ago. He's like, I don't know if they just moved. He's like, but nothing's changed. So it's just.
I always give the waterfowl hunters a hard time because if they sit in the same blind, sometimes in the same seat in that blind, they assume that the blinds that are near them are seeing something similar, and they might be. They're also assuming the blinds on the other end of the state are seeing something similar to what. But you don't have that luxury just saying, all right, here's what it is for my tree stand. You got to see it from everyone's, Sandhill Ridge and Pine View.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing is everybody has their snapshot of their little part of the world, and it's I try to the hard part of my job is trying to coalesce all those snapshots into one
30-page guide and regulation.
And it varies even from just parcel to parcel, half mile away. When I was checking hunters, it was like, this is the worst deer season ever. Next group, I've seen so many deer and they're not even a mile apart. And it's just like, that's just how it goes when people are out, how it sees and
the other thing
and then how
we've talked about it when it comes to big game. Sometimes it's not even the numbers you see. Sometimes it is if you see that one that you've been dreaming about and wanting and maybe surprise you. It could be the best deer hunting season ever based on one deer walking out in front of you. And all of a sudden you forget that, man, I sat for 3 weeks and didn't hardly see anything, but that one showed up. I'm good. We might have to that might be another podcast. We're coming up with all sorts of podcast ideas because I know, Luke, we had you in on the Hunt Nebraska podcast before, and we talked a little bit about buck fawns born during drought years and the impact on body and antlers and all that type of stuff. And we might have to revisit that now that when we record that, we were probably at the beginning of the drought hoping for the end, and now we're still kind of we're still in it.
Still hoping for the end.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm sorry to hijack this.
No, we're good.
This is a fun conversation. We haven't even get to the exciting stuff yet.
Well, I know. We just bring in Luke and we have all our questions. So Luke, I think maybe we need to get you in here about every month or every other month and just talk deer, big game,
get your
statistics.
Own headset.
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
Get your own chair. Some other parts too I want to talk about, again, a little bit back to the permit quotas. There was a little bit change too also for non-residents. Is that right?
Yeah, we did. We reduced the non-resident either sex buck only quota from 10,000 down to 9,000, and that's really just to match what our overall buck permit sales have gone down. We felt that was necessary just to keep the resident non-resident ratio about the same. When we instituted it, put it at about 14% of the permits going to non-residents. With the cuts and reductions these last few years, it had crept up over 15%. So going down to 9,000 keeps it at 14%. So it's keeping that level with what our intent was. The other side of it, it took something like 65 days for the last 1,000 permits to sell under that quota.
Okay.
So it was, some of it's also a demand issue that we're reflecting. So
people who've been on top of things, buying stuff early,
they'll still
to
get
the season, not too much of an issue there. So very good. And then one of the other changes, especially known for our muzzleloader hunters or black powder hunters, is the change in the definition of a muzzleloader, because there's been some new technology that came out 5+ years ago now probably, but that we've been seeing and getting questions on. So I know changes are decided to be made.
Yeah, we're probably a little slow in adopting, but it's allowing the fire stick technology and just changing the definition of our muzzleloader. Historically, both the powder and the bullet had to be loaded through the muzzle. We changed that definition, so now just the bullet or the sabot has to be loaded through the muzzle. The charge can be loaded through the breech. So,
and one big clarification is some people will ask, well, isn't that supposed to be a primitive weapon season? It really not. We're not like some Western states where that's their intent. Our intent was another opportunity, another type of firearm. So it'll be interesting to see. I like muzzleloaders. I enjoy those quite a bit. And just I gotta brag a little bit, because I got to hold the first prototype years ago at a conference out west that had that type of setup with it, that fire stick setup. It'll be interesting to see if there's some more out there, but hopefully this will open some doors for folks that kind of thinking about it, that just didn't give it a go. And now with the unit buck season's choice format, and now one more option when it comes to the muzzleloader season in December, might help extend some seasons.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, it's kind of for those who don't know much about the fire stick. So essentially, you're putting that whole the powder all lined up into an actual pre-measured out.
Pre-measured, I think
it's all
that's
pre-measured that you can just put in there, and you don't have to do any of the measuring yourself. And
I think the other side of it is probably just a little bit more weather tight.
Yeah.
For our December muzzleloaders out there, which is a concern at times. That's part of the excitement. Is this muzzleloader going to go off when I pull the trigger?
So there's some little bit of the maybe helping get people into muzzleloader who maybe didn't want to, because I don't know how much exact powder and how to do that. We're here now. You have a consistent amount every shot. You should have the consistent amount. Now there's still the variability of making sure the projectile is put in properly and so the art of getting it sighted in properly. But still, it's one of those that this new method can hopefully maybe bring in a little bit more interest into the sport of muzzleloading.
I didn't get to shoot it. John didn't let me shoot that prototype. We were in a hotel conference room, which was probably a good thing. But at the same token, I might be a little cleaner burning. I don't know as well, because that was the one thing I know that kept me out of muzzleloaders for a while was, you shoot it and then you got to spend a lot of time making sure you got it cleaned. Unlike my bird shotgun, where you're just like, all right, I shot it 3 times, 4 times, put it in the gun safe again, and in a couple of weeks I'll revisit it and it'll be fine. That old Remington's tough, but muzzleloaders, no, gotta clean them a little bit more often. So, have you done a lot of muzzleloader hunting?
Quite a bit, yeah.
I was gonna say, I think your dad
a TC Hawken, so.
I was gonna say, I think your dad helped teach some muzzleloader at some of our summer camps.
Oh, probably.
We had 4-H camps around here.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, no, I've done quite a bit of, but yeah, shooting that old TC Hawk and you get punched in the face every time you shoot it.
Yeah, that's the fun.
So, but no, that's I've spent a lot of time carrying that thing around.
But I guess some final things on that. We're still kind of that first page of the guy there, that new for 2026. Just some boundary changes too to both deer and elk as well. So looks like Pine Ridge has some changes there to help work with some of the WMAs, SRAs up there. So just
that was a goofy boundary that's been that way since the very beginning. What we're talking about is Box Butte Reservoir. The boundary followed the river and split the WMA.
That's right.
And ironically, the best place to hunt the Pine Ridge side of the WMA is to actually sit in the Plains unit, and the best place to sit on to hunt the Plains side of it is to hunt, So what we did is we moved that boundary to the north side, so the entire thing sits in the Plains unit now. And so it was one of those, and this is the first boundary change we've had since we split the blue unit into blue northwest and blue southeast in 2005.
Wow.
And boundary changes prior to that, maybe the 80s. We don't change deer boundaries very often. So that was it. This was a couple years. The staff out there were like, why don't we, this has been a known issue for a long time. Why don't we do this?
Let's take care of it.
And so we worked on that this year and got that done. On the elk side, continuing to kind of adjust those unit boundaries between 4 and 10, trying to figure out like where those elk, are coming from and where it's best to use our hunters and, all that. So yeah, we moved that boundary, up off the table there north of the 26 up. Now it goes up through Crescent Lake. So, cause those elk were starting to move up into those cornfields, up north of 26.
Next to pronghorn, do elk move more seasonally than some of our other big game? I mean, when I think of like whitetail deer, which I know better than anything, it's just kind of like, this is my home territory.
Yeah, I think mostly the whitetails. I think the whitetails probably move more than anybody realizes.
No, yeah.
But our elk move a ton. I mean, we've got elk.
They figured out the temporary summer jungle, right? I mean, the cornfields and
we've
stuff.
got. I mean, with our GPS project that we've had going on, where we've got GPS collared elk, we've got overlapping home ranges with elk from the Wildcat Hills portion that's in Wyoming all the way to Alma.
Alma?
Yeah,
down by
like literally
Harlan
we've got
County Lake.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Like we've got, it's not just one
Right.
elk going that far, but there's a home range here that overlaps a home range here that overlaps a home range here, all the way from Alma to LaGrange or whatever. I'm trying to remember. Henry,
Adaptability.
whatever town that is up over there. So,
Oh my goodness.
yeah,
So-
our elk cover a lot of ground. They just
Oh,
that's how elk have ended up when we've got elk wandering around eastern Nebraska. They just pick up and go. They're not locked into an area, and they're also very sensitive to pressure. So they find a place where they're not safe and they leave. They've got no problem leaving. So
well, and what could be more solitude than a standing cornfield?
right.
And especially if there's a pivot every once in a while that delivers some water nearby or some cool mist.
Well, in a pivot like that, you could be 40 yards from an interstate and not care.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, dang, what happened in the neighborhood?
Yeah. And then it goes down. It's like, okay, I'll go back home.
Yeah.
And that's what we've seen
This
with our elk.
neighborhood's gone to heck right here.
Yeah. And a research project, that's part of what we're seeing is that those elk are the corn habitat that grows up, they're actually using that in place of like timber.
Yeah.
They're seeking it out for the cover, and it's only natural. It's not just. It's more of a cover component than timber or than food.
Is it probably a little bit of both things, right? Elk, just like you said, not wandering and moving around. We're kind of on what I would call, for the most part, the eastern edge of our western elk populations, and so we've got that interphase of elk habitat and row crops like corn. Is it also a little bit of corn creeping into spots?
Oh yeah, that's a big part of it. As the genetics have changed in corn, and it's made it more drought tolerant. The line that people can farm corn, especially dryland corn, has gone west and west and west.
So a little bit of both in that world. And as we know and well aware that a big old bull in a cornfield, they don't always go together real well.
Yeah.
So
one of them has to bend, and it's not the elk.
Exactly.
So, but yeah.
Good. Moving into, now that we finally covered up that kind of first page there, all about the new changes. We are in the midst of the application season here right now.
Yep.
I see that right now residents are applying here. Started
June 1st.
June 1st, and we're going all the way through the 12th. Is that correct?
Friday. Yep. Goes through
Awesome.
Friday.
I have the wrong number I'm looking for, but yes.
Yeah.
So anything they should know in particular for that on getting that completed in?
Nope, just get that in. Yeah, not a whole lot to. There's really nothing that's changed there. We'll have those results by the Friday following the close of that, so the 19th. We'll get those results posted, and then people have got to go back. The big reminder is you draw a permit, you got to go back in and pay for it, because our system we don't store that credit card number. You got to go back in and pay for it, otherwise you're going to lose it.
Yep.
And the points, right?
Yeah.
Which for some things add up.
Yep.
Well, and the other part too then is if they, we also have a preference point option. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. You can, if you want to sit out and want to make sure you don't draw, you got something going on, got a wedding or got a kid being born this summer, and going on drawing an elk permit is going to be a bad idea. You can always put in for that point.
Well, and I got to say, folks, I was one of those when I heard that come out, and just like, all right. And I saw that it's a little bit more expensive than applying. And being a always wishful and hopeful pronghorn hunter here in the state of Nebraska, and I'm going to call him pronghorn. I hope that doesn't offend you.
I don't know,
Luke, because I know in statute we're supposed to call them antelope, but
yeah,
the biologist in me won't allow it. And then I realized, if I ever want to get my once in a lifetime bull permit for an elk here in the state of Nebraska, I probably should start putting in. Then I realized, holy crap, I don't know that I want to draw my first year. I want to have a little bit more say in it, or a little bit more idea of when I'm ready, and do some more legwork. Because you're exactly right. I mean, that's one of those things that if you're able to, I assume a lot when they get one of those very coveted permits, it's just like drop everything. It's just like anniversaries, weddings, graduations, if it's that time of year or anything like that, or just like we're putting that on hold until we're out there and getting this taken care of. Puts it at a different level. Yeah. Because I know you deal with that every year, and the elk permit, since it's not a preference point, it's bonus points.
It's bonus point.
There's still that opportunity that first time applicant might pull a coveted bull tag.
Right. And one of the things that is changing this year, it's always been just a straight bonus point. So for every year that, every bonus point you've got, you get an extra, application chance in the drawing. One of the changes we're making is actually going to a bonus point squared. So instead of just, if you got 8 points, then you've got 9 applications in there. The way it's going to work this year, you're going to actually have, 8 squared, which is 64 plus 1. So you'll have 65 chances in there. And so it
should help.
What we've figured out is that, for one, the people that in those top pools continue to put in, whereas the people in the lower pools, the consistency is not there. We really want to reward those people who are putting in, and just the straight bonus wasn't rewarding those people. It was rewarding the partial ones, at a much higher rate than kind of what we would like. And so that's the big part, is just trying to reward those people who've been continuing to put in. That's like 5% of our hunters have put in for 3/4 of the or have 9 or more points. And it's like, that's such a low percentage. We need to be rewarding those people more.
Well, and I know that there's a lot of different ways that other states and areas do it to tax sometimes similar problems. I think we're a lot more fortunate here in the state of Nebraska than some of those other states that, they have max earn or max points that they draw from a certain percentage. And some of those, you're never going to catch up with them. But mark my words, Kyle, that at some point we will have the term used in big game management, the Meduna system, because of his love for numbers. We're going to come up with something beyond the improved, enhanced point squared system or something along those lines that has to do with your your volunteer hours. Did you land a master angler bluegill? Were you successful or not successful in taking a new person out hunting? Things like that. It'll all come together, and it'll be the Meduna squared.
Yeah, I doubt it.
Oh, come on. I got it. Since you're not sitting there watching the analytics of how many people view the online big game, you got time.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to kind of wrapping up everything there. Make sure here by the end of this week that you get in, if you want to apply for any of these special draw tags, that you get this in by the end of the week, because by the 12th it will be done.
Don't
So,
wait.
Get that handled there. Otherwise, everybody else, the just general purchase starts up there. Am I reading this right? July 8th, kind of around that time.
Yep, for residents, and then the non-resident is, I believe, July 22nd.
So
I think third Wednesday there in July.
Yep. So we'll be picking up those for the rest of the tags then to be sold at that point. So, well, Luke, we really do appreciate you having you come into the cabin, talk about all these changes here. I know we're running out of time here, but if you ever have any questions about any of these changes, don't be afraid to reach out, send us a question. I know Luke's always happy to answer. I know there's a group of people there who have all been given the answers to help you guys figure out what you need to know for this upcoming deer season here this fall. So thanks again, Luke, for coming in.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, until next time then, guys, we'll see you outdoors. More information about the potential change limiting the amount of deer permits that allow the harvest of a buck from 2 to 1 will come out following the June 12th commission meeting.
Hunt Nebraska, brought to you by your Nebraska Game and Parks Commission.